Hello, and welcome to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I'm sitting in front of my movie wall, and I'm wearing my Armor of God t-shirt. And also, I don't think I mentioned this in the last episode, but I do have my Bible, the Epic miniseries, right on here on my right-hand side. And yes, I'm talking today on this video called Noah's Ark, the story that disproves the entire Bible. And I ended up kind of coming across this video in a feed. I was just kind of scrolling along, and I happened to see it. Started watching it. I started going, yeah, he's wrong about this. He's wrong about this. He's wrong about this. What about this? What about this? What about this? There's a lot of things that I kind of see, and I go, it really makes my head hurt when I see that, and it makes it so that when I see this kind of cognitive dissonance between just even common sense and just, how much people want to throw away something because they find something that is not within the realm of what they think as normal, okay? If it's outside of their realm, it's like, oh my gosh, that's too much. And again, if this is causing you, if you watch a video like this and it causes you to question your faith, then you really need to buckle down and start praying to God and ask Him to send you a sign. If you're watching my video of this, I hope that this is actually bolstering your faith. I hope it's not causing you to doubt. I hope it's not causing you to stumble. I hope that you're actually viewing this and you're going, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. I can actually get behind the scientific truth that Noah's Ark could have worked had, something happened. And I put some stuff down in the description box so that you can actually do some research of your own, okay? And start with video number 1 in this series, where I actually read the story of Noah's Ark, and then I start into this video by this guy's name. YouTube name is The Truth Hurts. Also down in the description is the actual video. If you want to go and watch it and then come back and watch my video series, you're welcome to. I always recommend that if you want to see the full thing uncut without me talking over it, that's fine. Just to kind of see where they're coming from and kind of go from there, then, great. If you're if you're already familiar with some of the arguments that have been presented about Noah's Ark, about, some of the different things that have happened, one of the things that I forgot to mention in the previous 2 videos was that about the historicity of the Bible is right where they know that there was a plain where the Red Sea has actually retreated back from where it used to be. There was an actual plain where they think that they would have made the crossing of the Red Sea, and like right in that line, they went out and they went down, and there was something had happened, and they found like the sea kind of ebbs and flows, and as it retreated, it carried a bunch of silt away from and exposed some chariots that were from the dynasty of Ramesses II, who was the man who chased Moses and has the plagues on his tomb wall. And they know that the story of Moses is true because there's his army. Like, it was on his tomb, and that his army was swallowed by the Red Sea, chasing the Israelites once they were released. And they actually see all of these weapons and chariots out in the channel, right in line with where the Israelites would have crossed. So there's that. Okay. In fact, the Egyptian government was like, wow, that's pretty crazy that we found, because like there was some people that went out and found these things, and then like the Egyptian government came out and said, well, we're going to verify. So they sent some people out to take a look at the to put some scuba gear on, and they went down and they actually looked, and they were like, wow, this is actually like from the dynasty of Ramesses II, who was the one that was with Moses. And so we see that, and we now can, say, yeah, see, that part of the Bible is true, so why would you not believe the veracity of Noah's Ark? And as I said at the end of the last video, how would you not understand that, he doesn't necessarily have to bring adults onto the ark. He could have brought juveniles. Because he might have known, elephants eat a ton of hay. We're not going to be able to pack this thing with tons and tons of food. So I'm going to bring juveniles on the boat. Some could have been adults. Some could have been juveniles. You never know. So again, and that's something where, like I said, if you go look at the Ark project and you start looking at that stuff, then you'll see it. So let's jump into this video. Like I said, I'm going to let it kind of go for a little bit, and then we'll come back and I'll pause it when I'm ready to talk.
And I should provide a big warning at this point. If you possess even the slightest amount of knowledge of the animal kingdom, the natural world, and the theory of evolution, and not from religious organisations' publications, then you may want to look away now. Under the heading, Could the Ark Have Held All the Animals?, the Insight book says, it is true that encyclopedias refer to over 1 million species of animals, but Noah was instructed to preserve only representatives of every kind of land animal and flying creature. That means just 43 kinds of mammals, 74 kinds of birds, and 10 kinds of reptiles could have produced the great variety of species of these creatures that are known today. They assert that within the space of only 4,300 years, 43 kinds of mammals have evolved into over 5,500 species. One kind of monkey got off the ark. 4,300 years later, we now have over 330 species of monkey. According to that evolutionary rate of 1 to 330, if we were to travel 4,300 years into the future, we would witness a world plagued by 108,900 species of monkey.
Somebody keep this dude away from a biology textbook. Don't ever let this person ever write a biology textbook. Ever. Okay, where to start? Speciation does not prove evolution. Okay? Because, as stated previously on this channel and various other video rebuttals, Professor Dave, Simon Dan, and some of the other videos that I've done along this similar topic, the problem is when you have a certain when you have the tree, like I said before, you have kingdom, phylum, order, family, and then you have a couple more species at the bottom. Okay? And species is subvariance within the same order and family. Okay? It has very, 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 very little to do with variation. It's just variations of a theme. That's all it is. Okay? Because if you look at how many breeds of dogs there are, and supposedly around, 6,000 years ago or so, they claim that we tamed the first dogs. I think that was what the movie Alpha was supposed to be on. It was supposed to be like, hey man, during these caveman times, when we were still scratching out a living, we befriended wolves and we created dogs. Ha ha ha. Okay. So if you look at that, and you look at when cavemen supposedly lived, which is around about the same time that Adam was supposed to have come on the earth, which was about 6,000 to 5,000 years ago, okay, then if we could have gotten from having a pair of domesticated wolves down to however many species of dogs that we have today, and we're still discovering species of dogs because there are so many different species of dogs, because all the different breeds. I mean, and there's so many out there that we've never cataloged because they're mutts, right? They're like one breed has a litter with another breed, and then that one has a litter with another breed, and then that one has a litter with the first one. And it's like you get these mixes, right? You get all of these different fur types, and you get all these different things. We've now created designer dogs, or like labradoodles and Maltipoos and various things like that, where we're breeding poodles with various different dogs to create hypoallergenic dogs that don't shed. It's funny to me that this guy can sit there and go, so if one species of monkey gets off the Ark and has over 330 species of monkey today, then that extrapolates into all these. No, it doesn't. Because we don't know how many of those monkeys were hunted into extinction. Okay, like we know that in Central Africa, where they found the skeleton of Lucy, the supposed Australopithecines, which isn't true, that was actually a bonobo ape skeleton. And we know that there were bonobo apes that lived in this region because we have records verifying from the early days of people exploring Africa, and from written records or from oral traditions from different tribes that lived in the region, that there were these supposed apes that were living in that region. So, and they hunted them. Okay, so we know that there are species that didn't survive. There are species that go out. There are species that happen because other species take their place. Other species are hunted into extinction. It's one of the reasons why we created the Endangered Species Act, was to try to save as many of the current species that we have and all this kind of stuff. And again, speciation explicitly is not proof of macroevolution. It is only variations of a theme. Okay? It's just like there are many, 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 many different types of humans on the earth today, with different skin tones, bone structures, muscle structures, all that stuff, but we're all humans. Okay? Even though we're all different in appearance, we're all the same. We're humans. We could classify ourselves as different species. Okay? Within that, because we don't look different, we're not classifying ourselves as different species. It's like Darwin's finches. Okay? A pair of finches, or a group of finches, flew out to the Galapagos Islands, and then over time their beaks formed into various different shapes because they had to adapt to their surroundings. That adaptation created different species of finch, but they're still finches. Okay? You could still breed those two finches. They didn't want to breed, but you could still breed those finches. Okay? If you force them into a cage and you forced them to breed, or if you took the sperm from the male and an egg from a female and you bred them, you could get a hybrid finch. That kind of stuff. It's the same thing with mules. Okay? They took donkeys and they took different things, and they took donkeys and they took horses, and they bred them together to get mules. Mules are sterile. Okay? They can't breed. But we can breed them because they're still equine. Okay? They're of the same kind. Do you understand that? Can you understand that? Okay? Need you to post in the comments if you can understand the difference between species and kind. Because if I put 4 different animals up from 4 different orders or families, okay, you better be able to tell me that those are not variations on a theme. That those are 4 distinct animal types. Okay? Or it's the same thing if I were to put 3 different dogs and a cat. One of these things is not like the other. Okay? And if you can't figure that out, then I'm sorry, I'm not the one with the problem. That's you. Okay? And that's what we're trying to say is that the sense that there's the macro evolution, that there was some all-knowing, all-encompassing thing back over here that gave birth to all of the different species that we see today, or all the different families and orders and everything else, is bupkis. That's a fairy tale. Okay? What I'm talking about is that you have kinds of animals. That's up here. Not species. Species is at the very, 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 very bottom. Okay? It is the tippy, tippy, tippy point of the branches. Has nothing to do with the macro portion of that. It's like I said, dogs. Every single breed of dog is a different species of dog. Okay? But it stems back up to the canine family, which is a kind of animal. Can you understand that? I need to know that people understand this concept, because there's so many people out there that get so stuck on speciation as being the root of all evolution, and it's not. It has nothing to do with that. Let's continue on.
What is the most unbelievably ironic thing here is that this organisation takes every opportunity to slate and rubbish the theory of evolution.
Yes, it does.
But when they need it to make the numbers of this story even remotely possible, they assert the most aggressive and rapid form of evolution imaginable.
No, it doesn't.
When I first reflected on this point, I was sat at my desk, looking at my musk turtle, thinking, are you one of the 356 species of turtle that is derived from just one 4,300 years ago?
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, your turtle stems from that turtle up there on the Ark. And if you can't understand that, then that's on you, not on the turtle. And it's not on the Bible, it's on you. Because turtles are turtles. No matter what species they are, they're turtles. And you don't think that a turtle can survive in seawater?
But the more time I studied the environment that my turtle was in, the more questions I asked. I eventually landed at reasoning which not one person I talked to was able to refute. Because my turtle was in a sealed container, being fed a specific diet, with a UV light providing both UVA and UVB, with a basking area, with enough water at the correct pH level, with a water purifier to cleanse the water and remove waste, and a water heater so that the temperature would stay in the perfect range.
So let's look at this little tick list he has here. Sealed container, specific diet, a light that provides UVA and UVB, a basking area so it would be able to come out and kind of lay on a little, like you see the little rock there, so it can come out of the tank and kind of rest. Enough water at the correct pH level, whatever that is supposed to do with anything. A water purifier and a water heater. Oh, and by the way,
if any one of those criteria weren't met, then my turtle would likely die. In fact, just a few days later my turtle did die, despite me trying my very best to ensure its survival.
So then, if his turtle was so set on that one criteria, on that specific list of criteria, then how is it that turtles survive every day all across the earth? Obviously, that particular species of turtle has to have a set checklist of things to survive. Because it's obviously an aberrant species. Because if it can't survive without the correct water at the correct temperature and the correct pH and the specific diet and a light that provides UVA and UVB and all of this other stuff, if there's a set specific list of things that turtle has to have to survive, then that turtle obviously was not created to be a livable in the real world. Because there are millions of species of turtle that live all across the world every single day that don't have a specific diet. Well, they do have a specific diet. They eat what what turtles, I don't know what turtles eat, but they eat what turtles eat. They swim in the ocean. They have a basking place because they come out and they lay on sand and rocks. They have, they have some of the different things of his tick list, but obviously your species of turtle required a hell of a lot more work than most turtles. And obviously, it was like your faith. If one of those things was just out of whack, there went the Jenga tower. Because it died, right? So then how is it that millions of turtles survive around the world every single day so that your turtle could exist for however brief its life was? I don't know how long you had that turtle for. Obviously, it was very small, judging by the picture, and it didn't live very long. I don't know how long, but obviously, some turtles had to exist long enough to get that turtle. And we know that they've been around for thousands of years. I mean, I knew a guy who had a turtle in an aquarium, and I mean, it was funny because like this thing would crawl up. He had like a just a regular aquarium, and it had like an area out of water, and then it went down into water, so that he could swim around, and then he could crawl out, and and this thing would crawl up, and it would crawl up the side of the tank, and it would stand up on the side of the tank, and it would go like this, and then all of a sudden, like, because its shell was heavier, the back part of its shell was heavier, it would literally like fall over and like go back inside of its shell and like tumble down into the water. He'd stay in his shell for about 5-10 minutes and poke his head out, then he'd poke his feet out and his tail, and then he'd ride himself, and he'd swim around a little bit, and then he'd crawl back up, and then he'd do the whole thing over again. He'd crawl back up the side and then fall back in. And as far as I know, that guy had that turtle for years. So obviously your turtle had a very specific list of needs that once those needs weren't being met, it obviously couldn't survive in the real world. Like, you couldn't take that turtle and take it to a beach somewhere and drop it off and say, "Goodbye, little turtle, go have fun." Because obviously it would have died the minute it hit the ocean. If it died a couple days after you did this video, or, when you got it, or I don't know how long it lived. Okay? But obviously there had to have been turtles in the world for you to have your, for you to have that turtle. So obviously that species of turtle has such specific needs because the two turtles that they bred it from were from specific breeds that when they bred it, they realized that one way too far this way or that way, and it just falls apart. The thing dies. It doesn't survive. So they gave you a list of what you needed to do to take care of it, and obviously something wasn't right, and it died. And that species would not survive in the real world because it obviously has enough mutations, negative mutations, that if it's not, everything isn't just exactly correct, it dies. Which means that if you were to have those two turtles that bred your turtle, then your turtle would obviously not survive in the real world. So it would not survive to live and reproduce and create a new species of turtle. So that is an evolutionary dead end, isn't it? Isn't that what we call natural selection? That's microevolution. No Christian has ever denied microevolution. And there are dogs out there that survive on a daily basis all over the world without anybody. I mean, there are dogs that have been living and breeding and thriving in Chernobyl. They originally came in and tried to shoot all the dogs. They didn't get them all. Because there are dogs all over Chernobyl now. There still are. They're all over the place. They're feral packs of dogs roaming Chernobyl. How did they survive for so long? That's the point. Think about it.
Now, for multiple reasons, the turtle would not have been able to survive off the Ark in the global ocean. But it would be equally absurd to suggest that on board the Ark, without modern technology and equipment, it would have been able to survive. How
That's because your turtle, your specific breed of turtle, did not survive on the Ark. Duh. How many times do I have to say this, dude? Nobody was suggesting that Noah had a huge generator on the Ark, okay, with aquariums full of fish and, UVB lights and UVA lights and all these other things. Are you that thick to think that that's what was on the Ark? Are you that dumb? I'm just asking this. Okay? I'm not trying to be rude or anything else. I'm asking, how dumb do you have to be to think that specific breed of turtle existed 4,300 years ago on Noah's Ark? That specific turtle that died in your care because one thing was wrong in your tick list. Or maybe there was multiple things wrong. I don't know. Okay? I'm not there. I don't know, because I don't know what the pH had to be and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, anyone who's studied pH, which I have as an instrumentation technician, I know for a fact that for pH levels and stuff like that, it has to be exactingly perfect. If it's too far this way or that way, it screws everything up. I worked at a paper mill where I had to go around and calibrate every single week the pH meters. You know what else affects pH? Temperature. If you have your water heater up a little bit too far, guess what's going to throw out of whack? The pH. You have your heater set too low, guess what it's going to throw out of whack? Your pH. Because they're tied. Okay, I actually had to go illustrate this to a man. Okay? I actually had to go in and because this guy would stick a pH probe into a sample and then walk away for 10 minutes and then come back and go, oh, the pH is all screwed up. Well, that's because the temperature coming out of the head box is the stuff flowing through the head box of the paper machine was hot, and he let it sit on a table for 10 minutes where it had a chance to cool off. You don't think that's going to change the pH? So I literally did this with him. I came out there and I sat him down. I said, okay, dude, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a sample from the head box. We're going to put our probes in it. I'm going to show you where it's the exact same pH. Okay, here. And then we're going to go for a few minutes, and then we'll come back, and then you'll see that it's different. So we did. We took a sample right off the head box. Okay, right next to where the pH meter is, we took a sample. We poured it in. We put in the probes. Bam! I had my probe. We had our probe from the instrument department. We had his probe from the operator. Okay, we put them both in. And I said, look, see, the pH meter here matches the pH coming out of the head box. I said, now, I got to go do a couple things. I'll be back in about 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes. Came back 15, 20 minutes later. I said, hey, man, come over here. those 2 meters were completely different than what the head box was reading. And I said, now do you see? I said, put your finger in there. You feel how cold it is. I said, next time you want to take the pH to make sure that the meter is reading the same as what, that this meter is reading the same as what that meter is doing. Then you take it, stick it in there, leave it there for about a minute. Okay? 30 seconds. You look at it, make sure that the pH reads the same, then you pull it out, you rinse it off, you throw the sample away. Duh.
True, Mrs. Turtle made it off the Ark alive? Only God knows. But they did. 5 months after beginning its journey, Noah's Ark finally came to rest atop Mount Ararat in Turkey. From the starting point to the finishing point, travelling in a straight line, it's a distance of around 450 miles. Considering this was a global flood, this doesn't seem a massive distance. Why didn't the Ark rest atop Mount Aconcagua in Argentina? Or Mount McKinley in Alaska? Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania? Or Mount Everest in Nepal? You'd have thought that all of those mountains, along with hundreds of others which are elevated higher than Mount Ararat, would provide more likely destinations for the final point of Noah's Ark. But what we need to bear in mind is that the writers of this story had no idea that any of these mountains even existed. They had no idea that many of these continents even existed. Their entire world was not our entire world. Could there be a more rational explanation as to why Noah's Ark ended up on top of Mount Ararat, aside from any other mountain?
Before I let him get into his thing, first off, as I've mentioned before, Noah's Ark was not a sailing ship. It wasn't. Okay? It was meant as a vessel. So, it never would have gotten as far as any of those other mountains. Number 2, those mountains didn't exist. As I've stated before, this guy is taking 21st century logic and trying to apply it to something that is beyond his ken. Okay? Because he's thinking, oh, see, when I learned about geography and stuff, and when I was in school, and they told us that, like, it's a slow process, and there's geology is a very slow process. It takes millions of years. So, these mountains would have been all over the world, and we would have had Everest. We would have had all these different mountains all over the world. So why would this thing only have floated this far? Well, first off, you're assuming that where Noah got on was right there. Okay? In fact, there's a lot of people that think that because of where the Garden of Eden would have been, that humans would have settled further west from that, or further east, depending on how you do it. But it, because if you look at the story of the fall of man, when it says says, see, the man has become, this is a 3:22. Then the Lord God said, see, the man has become like one of us, in knowing good from evil. And now, suppose he were to reach out his hand and take the fruit of the tree of life also, and eating it live forever. So the Lord God expelled him from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he had been taken. He drove the man out and stationed the cherubim east of the Garden of Eden with the flaming whirling sword to guard the way to the tree of life. Now, I'm not saying that by any means did that mean that Adam lived in the shadow of that. I wouldn't have. I mean, if there was a cherubim there with a flaming sword, like, come at me, bro. I wouldn't have lived anywhere near that guy. Okay. Now, it doesn't say where Noah and Cain and Abel and Seth and Adam and everybody lived. Okay. It only says, that the Tigris and Euphrates rivers are kind of where the Garden of Eden was located. Okay? So they could have lived anywhere between there and kind of the modern day Mediterranean and up through Turkey. Okay? So we don't know how far he was. And again, I'll put a video down that talks about Noah's Ark and how the drift could have accounted with the counterstones, could have accounted for the fact that it drifted north towards the mountain of Ararat. And I'll talk a little bit more when he gets to that part. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But let me just say that it says in 8 verse 3, the rain from the heavens ceased and the waters abated steadily from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the water subsided, so that on the 17th day of the 7th month of the ark grounded on the mountains of Ararat. The waters subsided steadily until the 10th month, and on the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. The other thing that it says is that it says when the fountains of the deep broke open, says that they went inside the ark, and then it said the flood continued for 40 days upon the earth. The waters mounted. This is in 7 verse 17. The flood continued for 40 days upon the earth. The waters mounted and lifted the ark so that it rose above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, so that the ark floated on the surface of the waters. The waters rose higher and higher on the earth, until the highest mountains everywhere under the heavens were also covered. 15 cubits above them the waters rose, so that the mountains were covered. Okay? And as I stated in one of the previous videos, I think it was video number 2 in this series, when the hydroplate theory talks about that there was water under the crust of the earth, okay? And when it broke forth, it caused rapid geology. And this was something that when I was listening to this guy talk, and he started talking about this, I'm like, well, dude, you're not even taking into account the fact that we know that rapid geology happens. In fact, when I first learned about geology, and this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was in like earth science classes, and then when I was in geology class in college, they were talking then about the Grand Canyon forming slowly over millions and millions of years. And you're going, what? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, on the surface it kind of makes sense, but then you really start to think about it and you think, oh, that doesn't work that way. Because like I said before, if you build a channel and you get about 3 or 4 kids, build a nice long channel of about, I don't know, 2 or 3 meters, about 6 to 9 feet, okay, and get like a chain of buckets going, okay? Grab water, walk up, pour it in. Grab water, walk up, pour it in, okay? As fast as you can get it going. That thing is going to erode so quickly because of the amount of water that you're shoving through it. And that's what happened to the Grand Canyon. In fact, geologists now, and it's because creationists have kind of, talked about how, rapid geology works. And even Kent Hovind talks about you can buy those little things where you can flip them over, and then within a matter of a couple minutes you'll have gradations of different soil layers and stuff like that, that they know that between about 4 to 6,000 years ago, they can't tell because the layers are all muddied, but that there was an actual, there's a high place at one point, and the actual height of the Grand Canyon, the actual rim, is above where this place would have been. Okay? But, so then, how would that water over millions and millions of years been able to flow uphill to cut a channel that we see? Water doesn't flow uphill. So we know that water follows the path of least resistance. Okay? And so this was the point where, as the water was starting to recede, okay, there was a point at which it broke over this one little channel, and then it flooded down, and it created, the Colorado River flooded down and created the channel that we see as the Grand Canyon. Okay, and we know this because at the very end there is a huge alluvial fan, okay, where the Colorado River comes out. And we know that the amount of water that flows through there at any one given time today, in the last, I think it was 150 years or 200 years or something, does not account for the amount of silt and sediment at the end of that alluvial fan. Because it's so big. And so, this guy sitting here talking about this stuff, that's the part that he's not understanding, is that there is a lot that explains. If you really look at it, there's a lot there. The global flood explains geologically.
Though earlier we stated how varied and how unrelated many of these ancient flood legends are, there does exist a small cluster of flood legends which bear a strong resemblance to each other. And these all derive from ancient Mesopotamia, what's now today the Iraqi floodplain. In Sumer, Noah was known as Ziusudra. In Akkad, he was known as Atrahasis. In the Babylon epic, he was known as Utnapishtim. In this region, when the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers burst their banks, the surrounding terrain could be filled like a ginormous bathtub. Both geologists and archaeologists have found convincing evidence that there was a flood here up to 22 feet in height.
So, kind of running out of time on this episode, but I'll end it with this. This doesn't explain. I'll end it on this, and then I'll come back in the next episode, and I'll kind of start with this, and I'll explain it a little bit more, because I know I'm kind of running out of time, and I don't want to sit here for another 10 minutes and talk. But basically, it says that it covered the mountains 15 cubits. A cubit, for those of you that don't know, is the tip of your middle finger to about here, about 18 inches. Okay? So 22 feet is not 15 cubits. And that's over top of mountains. That's not from that's not from the floor where the Ark originally rested, okay, to where it ended. It says it covered all the mountains to a space of 15 cubits. That doesn't account for this bowl that was they had a flood stage up to 22 feet. That doesn't explain anything. Okay, so like I said, when I get back, I will hit that. So I hope you're enjoying this series so far. Like I said, the reason why I've done this is because I want people to have knowledge, so that when they come across something like this, they can actually answer those questions in their own mind, or they can come here and they can actually see my videos and they can say, wow, this actually helps my faith, and I'm not a stumbling block. Hopefully I'm not a stumbling block for you. So anyway, smash that like button. Hit subscribe, drop a comment down below, let me know how you're liking the thing. I know I forgot to say that in the previous 4 episodes, or 3 episodes now. So anyway, we'll come back in the next one. I'm going to kind of move this back just a tiny bit because I'm going to want to talk a little bit more about the qubits and how that actually works. So thank you for watching. Have a wonderfully blessed day, and God bless you and your family.